Hi, I'm Bob,
And I'm Sherry.
and this is Mostly Politics with Bob and Sherry.
And today we have the pleasure to interview Mr. Ray Sosa, who is a candidate in the Democratic Party for the Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor. Welcome, Mr. Sosa.
It is a privilege to be here with both of you and with your audience. Thank you so much for allowing me at this time this morning.
Thank you.
So, Ray, you were born in Puerto Rico, I saw on your website. When did you come to the U.S., or to the States, I should say, because Puerto Rico is a territory of the States?
My mother was a diplomat for the U.S. and I moved full time after high school. We did high school in Honduras because of my mother's work. Um, right after college, and I went to Chicago, and then I went to Miami, and that's where I met my wife, and then I moved to Pennsylvania in 2010.
Oh, why'd you come to Pennsylvania?
My wife's family is from Doylestown. She's from Bucks County. And
Okay.
we knew that we wanted to have a family, and it helps when you have a family to help. So, uh,
Yep.
so we moved, and it's been home ever since for about 12 years already.
Okay, you ran for lieutenant governor in 2018. You also ran for Pennsylvania representative in 2020, and now you're running for the lieutenant governor again. So what is motivating you to wanting to get into the politics?
So I agree with my wife that if we ever see incumbents that do what's supposed to be done, then I wouldn't run because it's really tough on family life. But the challenge is that we keep seeing. My first run was really because the DNC recommended that I run. I was working for the Hillary campaign, and at that point, there was a whole investigation with Mike Stack, and they told me, "Listen, your resume matches the position ideally, so go ahead and run, and we'll give you a couple of tips." And sure enough, it was a very very good run, and we were very very happy that we were on that position. And then for state rep, I'm an expert in interagency coordination, in emergency management, and in criminal justice reform. So I could bring a lot to the table for that particular position. I wanted to people to start recognizing the name. So when this cycle came along, again, what motivated me was that we thought that there were a lot of things that needed help. Like, for example, we lost 41,000 Pennsylvanians to COVID. That should have been an emergency. That should have been coordinated by the lieutenant governor's office. We had first responders that were reusing protective equipment. In my wife is a first responder, so in my wife's network alone, 400 people died. So there were calls, there were letters, and nobody did anything. So, and I know that because I work for three governors already, I know that there's a lot to be done from that particular office to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
So, is your wife a paramedic?
No, my wife is the supervisor for the only comprehensive rehab, neuro rehab, gym for COVID positive patients in Pennsylvania. It's
Oh,
housed in Moss Rehab in Elkins Park, Montgomery County.
So when you say you served under three governors, were they Pennsylvania governors?
So no, I got appointed by three Florida governors. One, I used to represent the government of Puerto Rico in South Florida. Through that, I met two governors in Florida. So what happened was that through the Sister Cities program and through compacts, through interstate compacts, I worked with different states, with the governors and with the lieutenant governors. In Pennsylvania, I work since 1995. I work in about six different task forces with the administrations of Governor Randell, Governor Schweikert, and Governor Rich, in everything having to do with emergency management, criminal justice reform, gun parity. So I do have a lot of experience in different states with the executive office, So I know the best practices from very successful states, but the governors that appointed me were in Puerto Rico and Florida.
Looking back to COVID in Pennsylvania, we have the benefit of hindsight. We know a lot of things now that we didn't know at the time. What would you have done differently from a policy standpoint?
Well, first off, the pandemic had to be recognized early on. We have about 3 months in the beginning that no one did anything. They were just waiting for the lead from New York, the lead from New Jersey. We were just waiting for somebody to make a decision so that we would copy what they were doing. And that's a big mistake. We're the sixth largest economy in the US. So as a result, and since we are so connected with Delaware, New York, New Jersey, COVID came here and came here in force. So we missed the opportunity to protect our first responders. To this day, they have to buy their own protective equipment, which is not done in any other large state. We have three of the largest manufacturers for protective equipment in the nation based out of Pennsylvania. By executive order, we should have ordered those people to provide to our first responders. As an example, the Philadelphia Police Department is riddled with COVID. They have to buy their own protective equipment. And first responders are still infected, and I think it's a missed opportunity from the Lieutenant Governor's office to make it happen. The Lieutenant Governor's office is supposed to be the office that institutes or coordinates the logistics for emergency management, and this was an opportunity to get our ducks in a row when it came to emergency response. And I still think that we're not ready infrastructure-wise to respond to any emergency. But to answer your question, I would have done different our early response, and I would have geared up our first responders, which are the first line of defense.
So you mentioned the Lieutenant Governor's office really kind of failed during COVID. And now the Lieutenant Governor is running for Senate, U.S. Senate. And one of your challenger is a state representative, Austin Davis, who is handpicked by Josh Shapiro as a lieutenant governor. Now, what is your winning strategy as far as challenging such a connected network?
So when it comes to Austin Davis, we don't know. When I say we, is everybody that I know in the Democratic Party and in government. I do have a lot of connectivity. Why Attorney General Shapiro chose Davis? But the fact remains that he's completely inexperienced. He can't even verbalize what the position does. He has never been in anything related to emergency management, doesn't know interagency coordination, and has no idea what criminal justice reform is. I've only worked in the executive branch of government. That being said, when I explain the position at a granular level and how I match the position, I win people over. So this is why we keep getting invited all over the state. My initial plan was to just hit the 9 largest counties, like Governor Randall did in his second term, because of resources. But we've been invited to 16 counties to speak. So a platform of knowledge and a platform of experience speaks to people, especially now that is so important. The Republican Party has never been more aggressive, richer, or more prepared. So we have to bring our A game to debates and to the general. And that partner cannot be somebody that can even verbalize what the position does. So I will be the best partner for Attorney General Shapiro on the general, simply because I can explain this position at a granular level, and I can match everything that the Lieutenant Governor actually does.
Can you explain? We talked a lot about emergency management. Can you explain the lieutenant governor's role in emergency management in the state and what the other sort of major responsibilities of the lieutenant governor are?
Of course. Well, starting with emergency management is one of my pillars. I've been in 11 task forces, two of them international, dealing with emergency management. I've been in situations where the only organization that wants to be there is the Red Cross. So it is very important that you have a lieutenant governor that's ready and willing to enact the logistics of an executive order for emergency. If we have a natural disaster and that duty is given to someone that has never even Googled the position, people will die. And as a little sideways on that, our infrastructure will never be able to withstand a serious natural disaster. Our climate changed already. We know that. I've seen 30-degree drops in one day just recently. So we all know that. What we need to tackle right now, and what I would do in the office, is start preparing, and that means infrastructure. In Pittsburgh, we had bridges collapsing on the actual route for President Biden the day that he came in a couple of months back. In Philadelphia, most of the bridges have been deemed unsafe. We don't have the infrastructure to manage floodwater, things like that, because there's four elements to every logistics of emergency management, and preparation is one of them. So we need to do that, especially in our rural areas. I am a farm. I come from a farm family, so I'm a farm boy, and I know that their infrastructure is lacking. It's from the 50s, and in no way are they prepared to withstand a serious natural disaster. So that's what I would do, and that's what I've done for 3 administrations.
So anytime an emergency is declared, is the lieutenant governor automatically the senior person in charge of emergency management?
Correct. He's the chair for the Emergency Management Commission for the state.
Okay.
Okay.
What are the other major roles,
So
responsibilities?
you have very specific responsibilities, and this is why most incumbents will never explain it at this granular level, because most incumbents cannot match it. This is a position that's notorious to be used as higher office, and that's a disservice. We discovered that just for COVID alone, 41,000 people died because of missed opportunities. So to answer your question, we have president for Senate. I'm an expert in legislative affairs. I've done it for, like I said, 3 administrations. Basically, that's just a traffic cop. You direct traffic in the Senate. You allow everybody to say their piece, to share their thoughts. That's how you build bridges, because those are your peers. The moment you go partisan or you don't let somebody say their part, then you get tossed out of your own chamber. And that's because we have a mix right now that's heavily Republican. So you can have that. So you're there to keep the peace and to coordinate traffic. That's it. Then, like I discussed, is emergency management, and then criminal justice reform. You're the chair for the Pardons and Parole Board for the state. You're the person in charge as lieutenant governor for giving second chances. I come from 2 generations of family members that have been advocates for commutation of sentences when they are meritorious, when they come with an institutional recommendation and with a path to rehabilitation. Everybody loves the commutation part, but you can't toss people out on the street without giving them the tools to be successful. And that means mental health. They don't recognize the world after 10 years. That means a job. That means a path to redoing their family and their finances. Right now, we're treating our prison system as a business. It's a very punitive system. Philadelphia alone has one of the worst jail systems, prison systems in the state. And it was just there was just an article a couple of days back from the Inquirer. So we have to make sure that we give opportunities to people that deserve it, and just a path to redoing their families. And I've done that for many, many years, since 1995. So I'm an expert on that. And I do think that we need a little bit more representation in our Pardons and Parole Board of the people that we're trying to help. So we're sitting in 70% recidivism. That's one of the highest in the East Coast. So that means that what we're doing is not working, and it's costing us millions of dollars, $160 million a year, just to keep people in jail. So we're better than that as Pennsylvanians. And then
So you're
go
so
ahead.
just real quick, you're an expert in the criminal justice system, and you know there's increasing crimes, and especially violent crime
Uh,
in Pennsylvania, and for that matter, all over the United States. There was a Black Lives Matter movement, and then you also have the defunding the police that was pushed by the media. What are your thoughts on both issues, defunding the police, Black Lives Matters, and also the the crime that's been increasing?
So the challenge that we've had in Pennsylvania is that, I've said it, we're far behind when it comes to criminal justice reform. We have allowed bad elements in different police departments to flourish. So I don't think defunding the police is a solution. I think our police department needs to be more supported, but I do think that we need to weed out the bad elements without a concern for who they know, what union they belong to. If they're bad elements, they need to be kicked out of the force. Our force has to be able to compete with the criminal element in major cities in Pennsylvania. They cannot be defunded. So that funding can be allotted the right way, and we get rid of the bad elements at whatever level they belong to in the police force. That has always been my position. But defunding the police is a mistake. When it comes to Black Lives Matter, it's a movement that has been organized for the past decade. And it is a movement that should be supported, simply because we saw everything. There's no explanation. We need to weed out the bad elements on the police department, and we need to make sure that our minorities, and me as a Latino, are treated equally. And that comes with making sure our police departments are not biased towards minorities, and that starts with the executive branch of government.
You also said there was 1.6 million Latino resides in Pennsylvania, and only half of it is eligible to vote. How do you plan to energize
Well,
the Latino voters in Pennsylvania?
well. So there's 1.6 million Latinos, and it turns out that we were undercounted by the census.
Okay.
So we are more. Now, they are not half of them are eligible to vote. Of those, about 800,000 are Puerto Ricans. So they come here ready to vote. So the challenge is that, especially in Pennsylvania, we've had situations where incumbents do not do their job appropriately. They use the office as a shield, and people notice that. So there is a lot of dismissiveness of the voting population because they haven't seen an incumbent that's accountable in years. And the lieutenant governor office is one of those offices where incumbents come in and hide for 4 years, and then people go, well, you know what, the position is not important, and that couldn't be further from the truth. It's not important because we haven't had an emergency situation in the state that's serious. Is perceived as not important because it's being populated by people that shouldn't be there, quite frankly. So this is why people go indifferent, because you can only hear no so many times from an incumbent before you give up. and I'm trying to convince people that it's time to put their elected officials up to speed on what people need, and people understand their power. You explain it to them, but when you have two generations of people that are used to not getting results, then people seem to not care. This is why on primary we normally have less than 20% of the registered voters voting, and that's not where we want to go.
Are you saying the reason the Latino population is not voting is because they're disfranchised by the politicians?
Yes. So normally
Okay.
we get knocked on our doors when it's an election cycle because they recognize that the Latino community could decide the fate of an incumbent. So I've had judges, I've had state reps, I've had state senators say publicly that they wouldn't be there without the Latino vote. But then when it comes to our representation, we only have 3 state reps that are recognized as Hispanics with a 1.6 million officially million person population, in which at least 800,000 of those could vote. So
So what is the challenge in the Latino community that is unique to the Latino community?
So challenges are we there is a lot of redlining when it comes to services in the Latino areas. So incumbents love to be elected, but when it comes to servicing the Latino community, it is not happening. That's the first, and that's in the big cities. That's a big problem, and in the smaller cities, forget it. It's even worse. That's a first. For some reason, they prefer to save their votes for things that have no benefit to the Latino community, and it keeps us behind. So that's one thing, and then there is redlining. When there's redlining, meaning disparity in services in between as an example, the Anglo community and the Hispanic community, especially in the poor areas, then the police department concentrates on the areas that the incumbents favor, and that's our main problem right now. And then we see so much indifference that it's disheartening to the Hispanic community to put their own representatives. But people should remember to knock on our doors for votes.
So, Ray, can you continue to explain the roles and responsibilities of the lieutenant governor?
My pleasure. So you have 2 more commissions that have been in the lieutenant governor's duties since the 90s, and they haven't met for the past decade because of ignorance, I guess. One is the local government advisory committee. Is how the lieutenant governor connects with the counties in Pennsylvania. So when you have a natural emergency or preparedness, which is what I would do, you need to be able to know which counties need what. Otherwise, you end up giving the funds to your friends. Okay, and they haven't met for the past decade. So when you have that disparity, plus, I mean, you do need to have relevant, up-to-date connectivity in case a tornado hits Susquehanna County. Who do you call? You need to know who the elected officials are. So it's very important, and the lieutenant governor is the chair for that committee. And then finally, the Military Community Enhancement Board, and that's how the lieutenant governor connects with the Pentagon to address the communities affected around the bases, the military bases in Pennsylvania. That's free funding for improvement of roads of the community, because the community gets impacted around the military bases, and they haven't even met. Plus, you need to have a direct link to the Pentagon in the case of an emergency. because funds for FEMA get coordinated. So one more aspect of this is, I don't know if you remember in the first cycle, well, the biggest thing was the lieutenant governor's mansion. Well, folks, it's not a mansion. It's smaller than my house. It's 2,400 square feet, but it was put in there as a strategic location because it's right next to the military base, to the National Guard base in Pennsylvania. You cannot have the chair for the emergency management of the state in an emergency having a 30-minute commute to your tools, and they're all based out of the base. So it's not a mansion. It was there as a strategic outpost to keep the lieutenant governor safe and ready to work in an emergency. But since people cannot explain the position, and most people use the position for higher office, this is not explained. So there is a movement to get rid not only of the house, but of the position. And it's because people cannot verbalize how important it is to the state. And then finally, I'm going to add to the duties of the lieutenant governor a one-stop shop for our small businesses, where they can come in with one call and figure out their financing, their permits, everything. As a businessman, I know that Pennsylvania has one of the worst business platforms for small businesses. 45% of our businesses that are small close within the first 5 years. And it's just because of resources. That's it. And like in every other state, when you have a thriving small business community, the state does very, very well. It's the backbone of the economy. And it actually insulates you against recessions and all that stuff when you have a very, very strong small business community. So that's going to be the duties that I want to instill in the lieutenant governor's office, and it will be a fantastic value for all Pennsylvanians.
So if these things are things that haven't happened in 10 years more, how do you know about them? If no incumbent's talking about, how do you even know they exist?
Every state has similar duties for the lieutenant governor's office. I've worked with about 7 of them already. So I know that there's more to what people say. If you investigate the position, it would tell you that it has at a minimum those that I described, including those 2 things that have been part of the lieutenant governor's duties since the 90s.
So these other states are actually doing these
Yes.
things. You've seen them done.
They're
but Pennsylvania's
visible.
not.
Remember, the lieutenant governor is the gubernatorial successor. So you need to be an expert in the executive branch. You can't have people hopping branches and say that they're qualified. I would love to be a judge, but it's not going to happen for me because I'm not experienced in the judicial branch. So my expertise is only in the executive branch of government. So I know what the position should be doing. And in every other state that surrounds us, the lieutenant governors are visible partners for the governor because they have so much responsibility that's vital for the state. And but in Pennsylvania, tradition says that they hide for 4 years. That wouldn't be the case. That would make it immediately visible with just the minimum duties.
I want to talk about the issues that the LGBTQ community facing. Do you feel like they're protected under the existing equal rights law? Another question I have is, you have a daughter, you have a 3-year-old daughter, and recently there's a lot of debate on the gender studies that's being taught to kindergarten to 3rd grade. I just want to know what your thoughts on that as a father of a 3-year-old daughter.
So I think that all of that should be taught. I don't think there should be a restriction because it establishes a platform for higher discrimination throughout the grades in schools. So that's how people plant seeds of discrimination. I really wouldn't mind if they explain to my daughter that the difference in between genders, and that there's sometimes children that have two mommies or two daddies. I've seen it explained very effectively for many, many years. So what Florida is doing, I think is wrong. I think Disney is in the right. And just gender differentiation and the different kinds of family structures can be explained to a child, and they would understand it.
Okay.
Right. Do you have a moral, philosophical belief system that sort of guides you?
Yes. I believe that, and me and my family, I have a family of preachers and I have a family of public servants for 3 generations now. And I believe that morality, I'm a religious guy. I believe that moral values are golden. I believe that public service is sacred. I believe that people should match what the position does in public service, just like you would do in an interview in the private sector. So when it comes to serving people, it's all about equality, it's all about morality, and it's all about doing right for the people without any future plans or without any interest. So when it comes to religion, I'm very respectful of all religions, and I think I'm a believer in God, and I think that people should be given a second chance and should be treated with mercy. They shouldn't be treated with punitive approaches, and that's what we see in Pennsylvania in different areas, and that breeds discontents in the community, and it breeds radical people. I think that once people experience ethics and equality and fairness, people calm down. And our political environment right now is really, really unfair and really, really heated. So my vision has always been about equality and morality, and that's what I instill in my family, and that's what we believe.
Just real quick, how does people reach you, or do you have a website? How do they reach you? How do they get in
I
touch
do.
with you?
It's Ray Sosa, LTGov2022.com. We're always available. That's how we are connecting with people, with donors, etc. And that's how we ask questions. I like the tough questions. I don't shy from questions. I'm the one that answers all those questions. So this is why we've been invited to so many places. People are not used to direct answers, and that's what we give.
Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you
and
to both.
best wishes.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Ray. It's
much,
been
and
a
thank you for
pleasure.
the opportunity, and greetings to all your viewers.